Hi, we're not on the range, we're at one of our training facilities, and today we're talking about caliber 7.62 by 25. So first, let's take a close-up view at what the cartridge looks like. Now from your left to right is a 9x19, a 357 Magnum, the 7.62 by 25, and a 40 Smith & Wesson. And you can see that the 7.62 is a slightly necked casing. Now 7.62 by 25 is available in a variety of firearms, but it's best known as an Eastern Bloc handgun and submachine gun round. And the real selling point of it is that it's a light bullet propelled at quite high velocities, and that appeals to some people. Now there's a mindset that some people have that caliber is the real thing to have, and you'll hear people say that they have a 45 because nobody makes a 46 and so on. And there is some merit to that point of view. Now there's other people that have the idea that projectile mass is really the selling point. And they'll talk about loading a 38 special with 200 grain bullets, and they'll say things like for a 9mm they have a 147 grain bullet because nobody makes 180 and so on. And again, there is some merit to that point of view. But there's another mindset that some people have, and that is velocity is really what you want. Get the lightest projectile you can, propel it at the highest velocity you can. And for people like that, the 7.62 by 25 has some appeal. Now the way this works is, in typical rifle cartridges, 30-06, 308 Winchester, those are available with a variety of projectile weights, and what you typically get is that a heavier bullet will produce a lower velocity than a lighter bullet will. But because of the greater mass, you get more energy foot-pounds. And not talking about effectiveness, just talking about how you measure power, energy foot-pounds really is the bottom line. A good example is, for a 30-30, there's some different ammunition out there, but by far the most common projectile weights are 150 and 170 grain. And depending on what ammunition you buy, when you look at the ballistics chart, your 150 grain projectile usually has an advertised velocity around 2400, while the 170 grain around 2200. And even though that's a lower velocity, by the time those two projectiles have gone 100 yards, the heavier bullet has greater energy foot-pounds. And that holds true with most of your common rifle calibers. However, in handguns, it very typically works a little differently. In many handgun calibers, you can have a lighter bullet that will have enough more velocity to make up for its lack of mass and deliver greater energy foot-pounds. For example, again, depending on what type of ammunition you buy, a 45 ACP with a 185 grain projectile compared to a 230 grain projectile, the lighter projectile goes enough faster to give you more energy foot-pounds. And you'll see that in a lot of handgun calibers. Well, some people take that to the extreme, and that's where you get calibers like 5.7 by 28, with ammunition available with a 27 grain projectile or a 40 grain projectile. Those can be propelled at such great velocities that, again, depending on what ammunition you buy, they can give you more energy foot-pounds than a 45 with a 230 grain bullet. Now, some people would say that doesn't really matter, but there's a mindset among some people that that's where it's at. And for people like that, the 7.62 by 25 has a great deal of appeal. However, that brings up some questions like, does energy foot-pounds really matter all that much? And what kind of velocities are we going to get out of typical 7.62 by 25 ammo? And how will all those numbers translate into effectiveness? Well, let's see if we can shed some light on that. So let's see what kind of velocities we get. Now I've got this CZ52 pistol with a 4.5-inch barrel, and the ammunition I'll start with is this PPU 7.62 by 25 with an 85 grain full metal jacket bullet. .1451. 1432. 1495, 1413, and 1453. Now let's try a different brand of ammo. Now we'll try the cellular and belted ammunition. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong. And it's also an 85 grain full metal jacket round nose. 1551. 1546, 1578, 1558, and 1566. Now let's go crunch the numbers. So how'd we do? Well, with our cellular and belted ammunition, I got a mean velocity of 1,559. So it would appear that 7.62 by 25 is high velocity. But as we've seen before, what kind of performance you get depends on which ammunition you buy. With this PPU ammunition, I got a mean of 1,448. That's 111 feet per second less. And that's quite a bit less. But both of these are just Full Metal Jacket target ammunition. What about some kind of more serious anti-personnel or hunting ammo? In this caliber, that can be hard to come up with, but I do have one. Let's give this stuff a try. Now I've got this ammunition from Reed's Ammunition and Research, and it's a 100 grain jacketed hollow point. Let's see what kind of velocities we get out of this. .1208, 1211, 1172, 1244, and 1230. Let's go crunch those numbers. Well, here's the results. With the Reed's ammunition and its 100 grain hollow point bullet, I got a mean velocity of 1,213, significantly less than the 1448 with the PPU or the 1559 with the cellular and bellet. But remember, these two are 85 grain projectiles, not 100. So with the Reed's, I would expect lower velocity, but this was still lower velocity than I expected. But how does that translate into power measured in energy foot-pounds? Well, if I did my math right, with the Reed's I got 326, which is still significantly less than the 395 with the PPU or the 458 with the cellular and bellet. So the numbers on paper are disappointing, but they are just numbers on paper. Let's go to the meat target and see how these numbers translate into real effectiveness on a real target. Well, it's getting dark, so we've resorted to artificial light. Now, given what I'd call the mediocre numbers we got with the Reed's ammunition, I don't hold out a lot of hopes for stellar performance on the meat target, but we'll give it a try. Now, forgive the redundancy, but for those who haven't seen it before, the meat target is leather jacket skin, followed by pork chop pectoral, pork ribs, a bag of oranges lung tissue, more pork ribs on the back, 4 layers of t-shirt on the front and back, and behind that, as always, the high-tech fleece bullet stop. And I'll shoot from 7 yards, and let's see how we do. So how'd we do? Well, bullets went through our ribs, or they hit a rib, shattered it. We got 100% penetration, and the bullets went into the fleece bullet stop. Now, regardless of caliber, when I shoot the meat target with hollow points, almost always those hollow points are stopped by the first, second, third layer of fleece. In this case, I only recovered 2 bullets, and I'm not going to show you a close-up because the hollow point expansion was next to nothing. And I only recovered 2 because the other 3 went clear through the fleece bullet stop. So, in terms of hollow point expansion and performance, the Reed's ammunition was disappointing to say the least. But in terms of penetration, we can really see what the 7.62 by 25 is capable of. Well, it's daylight again, and now let's see what kind of velocity we can get when we shoot 7.62 by 25 through some kind of carbine. Now, this is a Polish PPS 43CS, which is the closed-bolt semi-auto commercially available version of an Eastern Bloc submachine gun. Now, an interesting thing about these is in their original configuration, if I've measured right, it has a 9.5-inch barrel. So it can't be imported into the United States as a rifle. It's imported with the paperwork of a pistol. But you can't have a folding stock on a pistol, so the folding stock is closed, welded in place, and then the mechanism that makes it work is removed. And it becomes a pistol. So what the crew and I did was added this extra long flash suppressor. Now, a flash suppressor is considered to be part of the length of the barrel if it's permanently attached. This one's welded in place, it's permanently attached. So now that we have a 16-inch barrel, we can reinstall the folding stock mechanism, and it becomes, in the state that I live in, perfectly legal, and that's on the advice of licensed gun dealers, law enforcement personnel, and attorneys. Certainly before you buy one of these and modify it, check your local laws. But with this 16-inch barrel, only 9.5 inches of it is rifled and contributes to the compression when shooting it, but that's still twice the barrel length of the CZ52, so we should get a little more velocity. So let's take this to the chronograph and see what kind of numbers we get. And I'll shoot the cellular and bellet 85 grain full metal jacket round nose. $17.70. $17.58. $17.88. $17.77. And $17.88. Now let's go crunch those numbers. So with the PPS 43CS, we got a mean velocity of 1,776 feet per second. That's 217 feet per second more than we got with the CZ52 pistol. And that's a lot more. Now there's one other thing I want to show you. There are people who will say that the 7.62x25 is inherently inaccurate. Well, I'll go back 25 yards and I'll shoot the target on your left with the cellular and bellet ammunition, and the target on your right with Eastern Bloc military surplus ammunition. And let's see what kind of groups I can hold. And there you have it. Now this is me offhand at 25 yards, so part of what you're seeing is my ability to shoot this particular firearm. But when people criticize Eastern Bloc calibers or firearms as inaccurate, that's often reflecting the lack of quality control in Eastern Bloc ammunition. And when it comes to ammunition, quite often, you get what you pay for. Now something I did not demonstrate today was the 3A body armor test. I'm out of 3A body armor. But I can tell you that in the past, with a CZ52 pistol and this ammunition right here, I have shot through multiple layers of soft body armor. 7.62x25, when fired from a handgun, will go through 3A body armor most of the time. That having been said, what, if anything, is the takeaway from everything we've done today? Well, with our handgun and the cellular and bellet ammunition, we got a mean velocity of 1,559 feet per second. So if you're someone that's a fan of a high-velocity handgun, 7.62x25 might have a lot of appeal to you. The caliber does have some downsides. One of those is the cost. Now at the store where I bought these, I paid $25 for this and $22 for that. By comparison, that same store will typically have 9mm ammo for $14.95. So the ammunition is not grossly expensive, but it's not cheap either. And while full metal jacket ammunition is fairly common, coming up with commercially available expanding projectiles or hollow points can be difficult to do, and the stuff that I found was disappointing at best. I think there are some good applications for caliber 7.62x25. The main application for me is in this firearm right here, hunting jackrabbits with it. It's highly effective, and because the ammunition is small and fairly light, I can carry a lot of it as I'm walking through miles and miles of sagebrush. What application it may have for you, you be the judge. So as always, don't try this at home. I'm what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the 7.62x25 video.